The stars outside the window looked different here. Jack Holloway had spent 3 months aboard the diplomatic vessel Starward Hope, and he still was not used to how strange the universe looked this far from Earth. The colors were wrong. The patterns were unfamiliar. Everything reminded him that he was very, very far from home. He stood near the observation deck, watching the massive space station grow larger as their ship approached. The Valanthy hegemony had built this station thousands of years ago, long before humans had even learned to make fire. It curved through space like a silver ribbon, beautiful and ancient, and slightly terrifying. "You look nervous," said a voice behind him. Jack turned to find Ambassador Grace Moreno walking toward him. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. But Jack had learned during this journey that she was tougher than anyone else on the ship. She had spent 30 years working in diplomacy, and she had volunteered for this mission knowing she might never see Earth again. "I am nervous," Jack admitted. "Aren't you?" Grace smiled and stood beside him at the window. "Terrified," she said. "But that's normal. We're about to meet a species that can read minds. I think a little fear is reasonable." The Valanthy were famous throughout the galaxy. Jack had read everything about them during the journey. They were tall, thin beings with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They had 6 fingers on each hand and moved with a strange grace that humans found unsettling. But their most remarkable feature was their telepathy. The Valanthy could touch another being and read their thoughts, their memories, their deepest secrets. They had used this ability to build the largest peaceful alliance in known space. Dozens of species lived under their protection, and wars had become rare in their territory. Humanity wanted to join that alliance. Earth was new to space travel. They had only discovered faster-than-light technology 20 years ago, and they had quickly learned that the universe was a dangerous place. There were hostile species out there, and humanity needed friends. The Valanthy seemed like the perfect allies, if they would accept humans. That was still uncertain. "The Council has agreed to meet us," Grace said. "That's a good sign. They don't meet with just anyone." "What do we have to do?" Jack asked. "There's a ritual. They call it the joining of minds. A Valanthy telepath will scan one of us to verify that we come in peace. Every species that joins the hegemony goes through this. It's supposed to be painless." Jack nodded slowly. He had read about this too. The scan was brief, just a few seconds. The telepath would brush against the surface of your thoughts, confirm your peaceful intentions, and that would be that. Simple. Easy. Nothing to worry about. So why did he feel so uneasy? An hour later, the delegation gathered in the docking bay. Jack stood with Sergeant Kyle Bennett and Communications Officer Lisa Tran. Kyle was a big man, with a shaved head and suspicious eyes. He had been a soldier for 15 years, and he did not trust aliens. Lisa was younger, quieter, with long black hair and a gentle voice. She had learned 3 alien languages during the journey, and was excited to practice them. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the Valanthy entered. There were 5 of them, all tall and elegant in flowing silver robes. Their leader was the tallest of all, nearly 7 feet, with darker blue skin than the others. His eyes were like pools of black water, deep and unreadable. When he moved, it was like watching smoke drift through the air. "I am Zethkal," he said. His voice was soft but carried easily through the bay. "High Emissary of the Valanthy hegemony. We welcome the humans to our station. High Emissary, about Atena. High Emissary, about Atena. About Atena," he said. "High Emissary, about Atena." Grace stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Ambassador Grace Moreno. We thank you for this meeting. Humanity is honored by your invitation." Zethkal studied her for a long moment. His face showed no emotion. "You are a young species," he said. "You have traveled far from your home. We have watched you with interest. Your kind is unusual." "Unusual how?" Grace asked. "We are not certain yet. That is why we agreed to meet you." He gestured toward the corridor behind him. "Come. The council is waiting. But first, we must complete the joining of minds. It is tradition." All who seek alliance with the hegemony must prove their peaceful intentions. They followed the Volanthi through winding corridors made of a metal that seemed to glow faintly from within. The station was beautiful but strange. The ceilings were too high. The doorways were too narrow. Everything had been built for beings that were not human. Finally, they entered a large circular room. The walls were covered in symbols that Jack did not recognize, and in the center stood a single raised platform. Zethkal walked to the platform and turned to face the humans. "Who will be first?" he asked. The delegation was silent. Kyle's hand moved toward his weapon, an instinct he could not control. Lisa looked at the floor. Grace opened her mouth to volunteer. But before she could speak, Jack stepped forward. "I'll do it," he said. Grace looked at him with surprise. "Jack, you don't have to. Someone has to go first. Might as well be me." He walked to the platform and stood before Zethkal. This close. The alien was even more impressive. His skin seemed to shimmer slightly, and his black eyes reflected Jack's face like dark mirrors. "You are brave," Zethkal said, "or foolish. We shall see which." He raised his six-fingered hand and placed it gently against Jack's temple. His fingers were cool and dry, like touching smooth stone. Jack held his breath and waited. For a moment, nothing happened. Jack felt a slight pressure in his mind, like someone pressing softly against a closed door. It was not painful. It was not even uncomfortable. He started to relax. Then Zethkal screamed. It was a sound Jack would never forget. A shriek of pure terror, raw and desperate, like nothing he had ever heard. Zethkal's hand flew away from Jack's head, and the tall alien staggered backward, his dark eyes wide with horror. His mouth opened and closed, but no more sound came out. His whole body was shaking, and then he collapsed. He fell to the floor like a puppet with cut strings, his silver robes spreading around him like spilled water. His eyes were open but empty, staring at nothing. His six-fingered hands twitched once, twice, and then were still. For 3 heartbeats, the room was silent. Then chaos erupted. The other Volanthi rushed forward, shouting in their own language. Guards appeared from doorways Jack had not noticed, their weapons raised and pointed at the humans. Kyle drew his own weapon, and Lisa screamed. And Grace was shouting something about peace and misunderstanding, but Jack just stood there, frozen, staring at the fallen emissary. He had not done anything. He had not moved. He had not even thought anything unusual. He had simply stood there and let the telepath touch his mind, and somehow, that had nearly killed him. What was wrong with him? What was wrong with humans? Jack did not know. But as the guards seized him and dragged him away, he realized that everything had changed. First contact with the Volanthi had not gone as planned. It had gone much, much worse. The cell was small and cold. The walls were made of the same glowing metal as the rest of the station, and there was no furniture except for a low bench that ran along one side. A faint blue light came from somewhere above, but Jack could not find its source. He sat on the bench with his head in his hands, trying to understand what had happened. 3 hours had passed since the guards had thrown them in here. 3 hours of silence and fear and terrible waiting. Grace sat beside him, her face calm but her hands trembling slightly. Lisa was in the corner, hugging her knees to her chest. Kyle was pacing back and forth like a trapped animal, his boots making sharp sounds on the metal floor. "This is bad," Kyle said for the 10th time. "This is really bad. They think we attacked their emissary. They're going to execute us." "We don't know that," Grace said quietly. "We don't know anything. That's the problem." Kyle slammed his fist against the wall. "What happened in there? What did you do, Jack?" "I didn't do anything," Jack said. His voice was hollow. "I swear. I just stood there." He touched my head, and then... He trailed off, unable to finish. "Then he screamed like you were killing him," Kyle finished. I saw his face. I've seen men die in combat, and I've never seen fear like that. Whatever you did to him, it was bad. I didn't do anything. Jack stood up, suddenly angry. You think I wanted this? You think I planned to ruin first contact with the most powerful species in this part of the galaxy? I volunteered to help. Stop it, Grace said firmly. Both of you. Fighting won't help us. She looked at Jack with tired eyes. Tell me exactly what you felt when he touched you. Jack took a deep breath and tried to remember. There was pressure, like someone pushing gently against my mind. It wasn't painful. It actually felt normal. I started to relax because I thought it was going well, and then he shook his head. I don't understand. I wasn't thinking anything bad. I wasn't trying to hurt him. Maybe that's not the point, Lisa said quietly from her corner. Everyone turned to look at her. She unfolded herself and stood up slowly. I've been thinking about this. The Volanthi have scanned hundreds of species, maybe thousands. They've been doing this for centuries. They must have encountered hostile minds before, aggressive species, warlike species. So? Kyle asked. So, if it was just about hostile thoughts, they would have encountered that before. They would be prepared for it. But Zethkal wasn't prepared for what he found in Jack's mind. He was shocked, terrified. Lisa's dark eyes were thoughtful. That means it wasn't about what Jack was thinking. It was about something else. Something different about the way humans think. Before anyone could respond, there was a sound at the door, a soft chime, and then the metal slid aside. A Volanthi entered, but this one was different from the others they had seen. She was shorter, younger looking, with lighter blue skin that was almost silver. Her robes were plain gray instead of silver, and she carried a small device in her 6-fingered hands. I am Serena, she said. Her voice was softer than Zethkal's, almost musical. I am a scholar, not a diplomat. I have been sent to speak with you. Grace stepped forward carefully. Is the emissary alive? Serena nodded. He lives, but he is damaged. He has not spoken since the contact. His mind has retreated to protect itself from what he experienced. She looked at Jack with an expression that was hard to read. Curiosity, perhaps, or wonder, or fear. What did you do to him? Nothing, Jack said desperately. I keep telling everyone, I didn't do anything. I just let him read my mind. Serena was quiet for a long moment. She studied Jack the way a scientist might study an unusual specimen. Then she walked closer, her movements careful and slow. I believe you, she said at last. I do not think you intended harm. But I also believe that something about your mind hurt Zethkal very badly. And I must understand what it is. She gestured for them to sit, and she sat across from them on the floor, folding her long legs beneath her. Let me explain something about my people. The Volanthi have been telepaths for over 50,000 years. We have touched the minds of countless species across the galaxy. We have felt the cold logic of the Korath, the warm emotions of the Silvani, the strange mathematics of the crystalline beings of Sector 9. Every mind is different, but they all share one thing in common. What's that? Grace asked. They are all singular. Serena searched for the right words. Imagine a stream, clear water flowing in one direction, peaceful, orderly, easy to touch, easy to understand. That is what most minds feel like to us. Some streams are faster than others. Some are warmer or colder. But they are all streams. And human minds are different? Lisa asked. Serena's eyes went to Jack, and for the first time, he saw something like fear in them. The human mind is not a stream. It is a storm, a hurricane, 1,000 streams all flowing at once, in different directions, crashing into each other, mixing and separating, and mixing again. She shook her head slowly. Zethkal expected to touch a stream. Instead, he was swept away by a flood. The humans looked at each other, confused. I don't understand, Jack said. My mind doesn't feel like a storm to me. It just feels normal. I think one thought at a time, just like everyone else. Serena made a sound that might have been a laugh, though it was sad and soft. No, you do not. You only think you do. But there are layers beneath those thoughts that you are not aware of. Memories and emotions and instincts all running at the same time. Voices of doubt and confidence arguing with each other. Love and fear and anger and hope all existing together in the same moment. She leaned forward. When a Valanthi touches your mind, we do not just feel what you are thinking. We feel everything. All of it. All at once. And that hurt him? Grace asked. It overwhelmed him. Imagine standing in a quiet room, and suddenly 1,000 people begin screaming at you from every direction. That is what it felt like to Zethkal. He could not process it. His mind could not handle the input, so it shut down to protect itself. Silence fell over the cell. Jack felt sick. He had not meant to hurt anyone. He had not even known his mind was different. But apparently, just being human was dangerous to the Valanthi. What happens now? He asked quietly. Saren stood slowly. The council will decide. Many are afraid. They think humans are too dangerous to be allowed into the hegemony. They want to quarantine your species, keep you isolated in your own small corner of space. She paused at the door and looked back at them. But I am a scholar. I want to understand. I will study you, if you allow it. And perhaps, together, we can find a way forward. She left, and the door sealed behind her. Kyle sat down heavily on the bench. So we're too loud. Our minds are too loud. That's why he collapsed. It's more than that, Lisa said thoughtfully. It's not about volume. It's about complexity. Our minds are more complex than other species. We think in ways they've never seen before. Grace nodded slowly. The question is whether that complexity makes us too dangerous to accept or too valuable to ignore. Jack looked at his hands. Ordinary human hands. But somewhere inside his ordinary human head was something that had nearly destroyed one of the most powerful telepaths in the galaxy. He did not know if that made him proud or terrified. Perhaps, he thought, it made him both, and perhaps that was exactly the problem. Word spread quickly through the Valanthi hegemony. Within 2 days, everyone on the station knew what had happened. A human had touched minds with the High Emissary and had nearly destroyed him. The story traveled from ship to ship, from world to world, growing stranger with each telling. Some said the human was a weapon, others said he was a demon. A few wondered if humans were simply a new kind of monster that the galaxy had never seen before. But among the telepaths, there was curiosity. Many refused to believe that a single human could harm the great Zethkal. He must have been tired, they said. He must have been sick. There must be some explanation other than the obvious one, so they volunteered to try again. Serena brought the first volunteer to meet the humans 3 days after the incident. Her name was Voreth, and she was old by Valanthi standards. Her blue skin faded to a pale gray. She had been a telepath for 200 years and had scanned more minds than anyone else alive. She was confident that she could handle whatever the humans had to offer. I have touched the minds of warriors and murderers, she said calmly. I have felt rage so hot it burned. I have felt hatred so cold it froze. Nothing surprises me anymore. Lisa Tran was chosen for this attempt. She had the gentlest personality of the 4 humans. And Grace hoped that her calm nature might make the connection easier. Lisa sat cross-legged on the floor of the examination room, her hands resting on her knees, breathing slowly. Just relax, Voreth said. Think peaceful thoughts. I will be gentle. She placed her gray hand on Lisa's forehead and closed her eyes. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Voreth's face was calm, focused. Lisa sat perfectly still, barely breathing. Serena watched from the corner, recording everything on her device. Then Voreth's calm expression cracked. Her eyes flew open, and tears began streaming down her face. Not just a few tears, but rivers of them, pouring from her dark eyes like rain. She pulled her hand away from Lisa and pressed both palms against her own face, sobbing. What is it? Serena asked, rushing forward. What did you feel? What? Voreth could not speak for a long time. She just sat there, crying, her thin body shaking. When she finally found words, her voice was broken and raw. Grief, she whispered. So much grief, layers of it. Grief for the dead and grief for the living. Grief for what was lost and grief for what was never had. But underneath the grief, there was joy. Joy so bright, it hurt. And the two were tangled together, mixed together, impossible to separate. She looked up at Serena with haunted eyes. How do they survive this? How do they feel so much, and still function? She left the room without waiting for an answer. She did not volunteer to scan another human. The next volunteer was a younger telepath named Kethrol. He was strong and proud, and he believed that Zethkal and Voreth had simply been unprepared. He would be different. He would be ready. He chose to scan Kyle Bennett, the soldier. Kyle sat in the examination chair with his jaw clenched, his hands gripping the armrests. He did not like being touched, did not like being vulnerable, but Grace had ordered him to cooperate. This won't hurt, Kethrol said, though his voice held a note of uncertainty now. He touched Kyle's temple and reached into the soldier's mind. He lasted 8 seconds before he fell. His collapse was different from Zethkal's. He did not scream. Instead, his body went completely rigid, every muscle locked in place. His eyes stared at nothing, empty and frozen. When the other Volanthi pulled him away and laid him on the floor, he did not move at all. He had gone catatonic. It took 2 hours for him to wake up. When he did, he spoke in a low, distant voice, like a man describing a dream he could not quite remember. Fire, he said. A fire that burns but does not destroy. Rage that loves. Violence that protects. He looked at Kyle, who stood against the wall with his arms crossed. He has killed, many times, and he grieves every death, but he would do it again. To protect, to save. The two are not separate. They are the same thing. They are both him. Kyle said nothing, but his jaw tightened. Serena documented everything. She filled her recording device with notes and observations, trying to understand. She interviewed each of the humans for hours, asking about their lives, their histories, their feelings. She learned about Jack's daughter back on Earth, the child he might never see again. She learned about Grace's years of diplomatic work, her failures and successes, her hopes and regrets. She learned about Lisa's studies of alien languages, her loneliness, her quiet dreams. She learned about Kyle's military career, the friends he had lost, the enemies he had killed, the nightmares that still woke him some nights, and slowly, a picture began to form. Your species is very young, Serena said one evening, sitting with Grace in the small room that had become their meeting place. You evolved on a harsh world. Predators everywhere, scarce resources, constant danger. Earth wasn't easy, Grace agreed. It still isn't. The Volanthi evolved on a peaceful world, warm and gentle. We had time to develop our minds slowly, carefully. We learned to be singular, focused, serene. Serena's dark eyes were thoughtful, but humans did not have that luxury. You had to be everything at once, hunter and gatherer, warrior and healer, lover and fighter. You had to adapt to anything, survive anything, become anything. We call it being human, Grace said with a small smile. Yes. But what you call being human, we call being many. Serena leaned forward. Do you understand? Your minds are not singular because they cannot afford to be. You carry multitudes within you, ancestors and cultures and contradictions. Every human is not one person but 1,000 people, all existing together, all fighting and loving, and dreaming at the same time. Grace was quiet for a moment. Is that why we hurt your telepaths? Yes. When a Volanthi touches a human mind, they expect to find one voice. Instead, they find a chorus, a storm, A hurricane of thoughts and feelings that never stops, never rests, never becomes simple. Serena shook her head slowly. We are not prepared for this. We have never encountered anything like it. And that makes us dangerous? Serena did not answer immediately. She stood and walked to the small window, looking out at the stars. The council meets tomorrow. They will decide what to do with your species. Many want to isolate you, keep you contained. They fear that contact with humans will damage too many Volanthi minds. And what do you think? Grace asked. Serena turned back to face her. In the dim light, her silver-blue skin seemed to glow. I think you are the most fascinating species I have ever encountered. I think your complexity is not a flaw, but a strength. And I think... She paused, choosing her words carefully. I think the hegemony has been peaceful for too long. We have become comfortable. Simple. Perhaps we need to remember that the universe is not simple. Perhaps we need to learn from the storm. Grace smiled, but it was a tired smile. Will the council listen to you? I do not know, Serena admitted. But I will try. And I think you should try too. Me? You are the ambassador. You speak for your species. Tomorrow, when the council meets, ask to address them. Tell them what it means to be human. Make them understand. Serena moved toward the door. If anyone can convince them, I believe it is you. She left, and Grace sat alone in the quiet room, thinking about storms and streams, and the strange complexity of being alive. Tomorrow would decide everything. She hoped she was ready. The council chamber was the largest room on the station. It was built in a perfect circle, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. The ceiling was transparent, showing the endless stars above, and the walls were covered in ancient symbols that glowed with a soft golden light. Hundreds of Volanthi sat in the tiered seats, their dark eyes all focused on the center of the room. Grace walked alone across the polished floor, her footsteps echoing in the vast silence. She had left her team behind. Kyle had wanted to come with her, to protect her. But she had refused. This was not a moment for soldiers. This was a moment for words. The council leaders sat on a raised platform at the far end of the chamber. There were 7 of them. The oldest and wisest of the Volanthi, dressed in robes of deep purple that marked their rank. Their faces were unreadable, their black eyes watching Grace with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She had faced many difficult audiences in her 30 years as a diplomat. Hostile governments, angry crowds, men with guns who wanted her dead. But she had never faced anything like this. These beings could read minds. They could see through lies. They could sense fear. So she did not try to hide her fear. She let it show. She was human, after all. Fear was part of who they were. You are the human ambassador, the central leader said. His name was Velkorin, and he was ancient, his blue skin almost white with age. You have requested permission to address this council before we make our decision. I have, Grace said. Her voice was steady, though her heart was pounding. I thank you for hearing me. We will hear you, Velkorin said. But understand that many here have already made up their minds. Your species has injured 3 of our telepaths. Our high emissary still cannot speak. There are those who believe humans are simply too dangerous to be allowed into our alliance. Grace nodded slowly. I understand. May I ask a question before I speak? Velkorin waved one thin hand. Ask. Have you ever had a species withdraw from the hegemony? Have you ever had a member turn against you? Start a war? Break the peace? The council was quiet. Velkorin's expression shifted slightly, something almost like surprise. No, he said finally. In 12,000 years, no species has ever broken their alliance with us. Our telepathy ensures that we only accept those with peaceful intentions. Because you scan them first, Grace said. You touch their minds and make sure they mean no harm. Yes, Grace took a deep breath. Then let me tell you about human history. Because unlike the species you have accepted, we have turned against each other. Many times. We have started wars. We have broken peace. We have done terrible things. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several Valanthi leaned forward in their seats. 500 years ago, Grace continued, humans fought a war that killed millions. 200 years before that, we fought another war that killed millions more. Our history is filled with violence and betrayal and suffering on scales that would horrify you. She paused. Thanks for watching. She paused. But it is also filled with something else. She began to walk slowly around the central platform, looking up at the assembled Valanthi. My grandmother was born during one of those wars. Her city was destroyed. Her parents were killed. She had nothing. She was just a child, alone in the ruins. Grace's voice was soft, but it carried through the silent chamber. But she survived. She grew up. She married. She had children. And every spring, until the day she died at 93 years old, she planted flowers. She made beauty grow in the same world that had shown her such ugliness. She stopped walking and turned to face the council leaders directly. That is what it means to be human. We carry our pain with us. We remember our wars, our losses, our failures, but we also carry hope. We plant flowers in the ruins. We build families in the ashes. We love even when we have every reason to hate. Hall. Velcorin studied her with those ancient black eyes. You say this is a strength, but is it not also a weakness? Your minds are so loud because you cannot let go of your pain. You carry too much. Yes. Grace agreed. We carry too much. That is true. But it is the carrying that makes us strong. She spread her hands. A gesture of openness. A stream is peaceful because it flows in one direction. It knows where it is going. It does not question. It does not struggle. But a stream cannot change course. A stream cannot adapt. If you put a stone in its path, it can only go around, slowly wearing down over thousands of years. She looked up at the stars through the transparent ceiling. Humans are not streams. We are storms. We crash and we roar and we change direction without warning. We can be frightening. I know that. But when you put a stone in front of a storm, the storm does not go around. The storm moves the stone. The storm adapts. The storm survives. And destroys everything in its path, one of the other leaders said coldly. Her name was Lithana, and her face was hard with suspicion. Sometimes, Grace admitted, I will not lie to you, humans have destroyed. We have hurt. We have failed. She met Lithana's gaze without flinching. But we have also built. We have healed. We have loved, and we have done all of these things together. At the same time, in the same hearts. That is the contradiction you fear. That is the storm that overwhelmed your telepaths. She turned back to Velcorin. I am not asking you to trust us because we are simple. I am not asking you to trust us because we are peaceful. I know we are neither of those things. I am asking you to trust us because we are survivors. Because we carry our darkness and our light together, and we use both to make our way forward. The chamber was silent. Grace could feel hundreds of eyes on her, hundreds of minds trying to understand what she was saying. She extended her hand toward the council. Palm up. Open. A gesture of peace, but also of invitation. You have spent 12,000 years building an alliance of peaceful minds, she said quietly. Simple minds, orderly minds, streams that flow in the same direction. And it has worked. You have built something beautiful. But the universe is changing. There are threats coming that streams cannot face. Storms that only storms can weather. See, weak. She kept her hand extended. Humanity offers you something new, something difficult, something that might frighten you. But I believe it is something you need. Partners who are not simple, allies who carry complexity, friends who know what it means to struggle, to fail, to carry pain and hope in the same heart. No one moved. The silence stretched on, heavy and uncertain. Then, from the side of the chamber, someone stood. It was Serena. Her plain gray robes marked her as a junior scholar, far below the rank of anyone who should speak in this chamber. But she stood anyway, and she walked down from her seat, her footsteps soft on the polished floor. "Serena," Velkorin said sharply. "You forget yourself. This is not your place." "I know," Serena said. But she kept walking. She crossed the chamber to where Grace stood, her hand still extended. "I have studied these humans," Serena said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "I have listened to their stories. I have felt their emotions, not through telepathy but through words and time and careful attention. And I believe the ambassador speaks truth." She stopped in front of Grace and looked down at the offered hand. "I will not read your mind," she said quietly. "My people are not ready for that. Perhaps we never will be. But I will take your hand. I will trust you. Not because I understand you, but because I want to." And she reached out, and she placed her six-fingered hand in Grace's palm. The touch was warm, real, simple and complicated at the same time. Grace closed her fingers gently around Serena's hand and looked up at the council. "This is what we offer," she said. "Not a joining of minds, just a joining of hands. Trust, built through time, not telepathy. Understanding earned through patience, not power." The council leaders looked at each other. Old faces, uncertain faces, faces that had never encountered anything quite like this. Velkorin studied the two figures standing hand in hand in the center of his chamber. A human and a Volanthi. A storm and a stream. "We will discuss," he said finally. "The council will make its decision tomorrow." But as Grace and Serena walked out of the chamber together, still holding hands, Grace thought she saw something in Velkorin's ancient eyes, something that might have been hope. 6 weeks had passed since the council meeting. 6 weeks of waiting, negotiating, learning, and hoping. The humans had been given quarters on the station instead of a cell, and they had been allowed to move freely through certain areas. It was not full acceptance, but it was progress. Jack spent most of his time with Serena. She had become their guide, their teacher, their advocate among the Volanthi. She was fascinated by humans, by their contradictions and complexities, and she asked endless questions about Earth, about human culture, about the strange way their minds worked. "Tell me about your daughter again," she said one afternoon, as they sat in a garden filled with alien plants that glowed softly in shades of purple and blue. Jack smiled. He liked talking about Emma. It helped with the homesickness that never quite went away. "She's 7 years old. She has her mother's eyes, and my stubbornness. When I left for this mission, she made me promise to bring her back a star." "A star?" She meant something from space, a souvenir, something to prove that I really went out there. Jack looked up at the distant ceiling, which was painted to look like a night sky. "I told her I would try." Serena was quiet for a moment. "You miss her very much. Every day. And yet you volunteered for a mission that might have kept you away forever. That might have killed you." She tilted her head, studying him with those deep dark eyes. Why? Jack thought about it. It was a question he had asked himself many times during the long journey. "Because I wanted her to have a future. A safe future. Earth is small and weak compared to what's out there. I wanted to make sure she would grow up in a galaxy that wouldn't try to destroy her." "You carry love and fear together," Serena said softly. "Just as Kethral said. You act from both at the same time. Is that so strange? To us? Yes. Volanthi experience emotions one at a time. We feel love, and then we feel fear, and then we feel hope. Each emotion has its turn, but you feel them all at once, all mixed together." She shook her head in wonder. "It must be exhausting." Jack laughed. "Sometimes, but it's also..." He searched for the right word. "Rich. Like a meal with many flavors. Instead of just one." Serena smiled. It was something she had learned from the humans, that curving of the mouth that meant happiness. Volanthi did not normally smile. but she had adopted the habit. I would like to taste that meal someday. But I fear it would be too strong for me. Maybe not, Jack said slowly. An idea had been forming in his mind for days, and he finally felt ready to speak it. What if we could give you just a little taste? What if we could learn to control what we share? Serena looked at him with surprise. What do you mean? Your telepaths were overwhelmed because they touched my whole mind at once. All the voices, all the emotions, all the memories flooding into them. But what if I could learn to share just one thing at a time, one memory, one feeling? Like, he gestured at the glowing plants around them, like picking one flower instead of grabbing the whole garden. Serena was silent for a long moment. Her dark eyes were thoughtful, calculating. It might be possible, she said finally. Humans have some awareness of your own minds. You have practices you call meditation, yes? And focus exercises? Yes. Then perhaps you could learn to project a single thought deliberately. To hold everything else back and offer only what you choose to share. She stood up, excited now. It would require practice, many attempts. But if it worked, then your people could connect with us safely. Jack finished. And we could show you that we're not just storms. We can be gentle too. When we try. The training began the next day. It was hard, harder than anything Jack had ever done. Serena taught him meditation techniques that the Valanthi used to focus their minds, and he adapted them for human use. Hour after hour, he practiced holding a single thought in his mind while pushing everything else away. A memory of his daughter's laugh, the feeling of warm sunlight on his face, the taste of his mother's cooking. He failed many times. The other thoughts kept creeping in. The endless noise of being human. But slowly, gradually, he began to improve. He learned to build walls in his mind, to create a quiet space where one thing could exist without the rest. Lisa and Grace practiced too, though Kyle refused. He did not trust the telepaths, and he did not want anyone inside his head again. Grace said that was his choice, and they did not push him. After 3 weeks, Jack was ready to try. Zethkal had recovered by then. He was thinner than before, and his movements were slower, but his dark eyes were clear again. He had heard about Jack's training, and he had asked to be the one to test it. You have courage, Jack said when Zethkal entered the testing room. After what happened last time. I was unprepared before, Zethkal said. His voice was softer than it had been, less confident. The experience had changed him. I am prepared now, and I wish to understand you. Not just fear you. They sat across from each other in the small room. Serena stood nearby, ready to intervene if something went wrong. Grace and Lisa watched through a window. I will offer you one memory, Jack said. Just one. I have practiced holding it separate from everything else. But if it becomes too much, pull away. Don't try to be brave. Zethkal nodded. I understand. He reached out and placed his hand on Jack's temple. Jack closed his eyes and focused. He pictured the wall in his mind, the barrier that held back the storm. And in the quiet space on the other side, he placed the memory he had chosen. It was a summer evening, 3 years ago. He was sitting on the porch of his house, watching the sun set over the hills. Emma was beside him, only 4 years old, her small body warm against his side. She was eating ice cream, getting more on her face than in her mouth, and she was laughing at something he had said. The sky was golden and red, and the air smelled like grass and summer. And in that moment, everything was perfect. No fear, no worry, just love. Warm and golden, simple and pure. He offered that memory to Zethkal. Just that, nothing else. For a long moment, nothing happened. Zethkal's face was still, his eyes closed. Jack held his breath, then tears began to roll down Zethkal's blue cheeks. But these were not tears of pain. His face was not twisted in agony. Instead, he looked peaceful, moved. His 6-fingered hand trembled slightly against Jack's temple. But he did not pull away. When he finally opened his eyes, They were filled with wonder. Beautiful, he whispered. It was beautiful. Just that one memory. That one feeling. So simple. So warm. He looked at Jack with new understanding. You have this. Inside you. This peace. This love. It exists alongside all the chaos, all the noise. Yes, Jack said quietly. We have both. That's what we've been trying to tell you. Zethkal slowly lowered his hand. I understand now, he said. I did not before. I thought humans were nothing but storms. I did not realize that storms can also be gentle. That they can bring rain to dry lands. That they can be beautiful. He stood and turned to face the window where Grace watched. I will speak to the council. I will tell them what I have learned. Humans are not a threat. They are an opportunity. A chance for us to grow. To learn. To become more than we are. The council met again the next day. This time, the decision was different. Humanity was not granted full membership in the Valanthi hegemony. That would take time. Trust. Understanding built over years and decades. But they were offered something else. A partnership, a relationship between equals, built on patience rather than telepathy. The Valanthi would learn to understand humans the slow way, through words and actions and time. And humans would learn to share themselves carefully, offering glimpses of their inner worlds when trust had been earned. It was not the alliance Grace had hoped for when they first arrived. It was something new. Something that had never existed before. As the delegation prepared to return to Earth with the news, Serena came to say goodbye. She stood before them in the docking bay, her gray robes catching the light from the distant stars. I will miss you, she said. All of you. You have taught me more than I ever expected to learn. We'll be back, Grace promised. This is just the beginning. Serena smiled. That human gesture she had adopted. I know. And I will be waiting. Jack stepped forward and offered his hand. Not for a telepathic scan, just for a handshake. A human gesture of friendship. Serena took it without hesitation. Tell your daughter, she said. That I hope she gets her star. Jack laughed. I think I'll tell her about you instead. She'll like that story better. As the ship departed and the station grew small behind them, Jack stood at the observation window and watched the strange, beautiful colors of this distant space. He thought about storms and streams, about complexity and simplicity, about the strange miracle of being human. They had come seeking allies and had found something more complicated, something harder, something better. Humanity was still small and young in a vast universe, but they were no longer alone. And somewhere out there, the ancient telepaths of the stars were learning to appreciate the storm, not despite its chaos, because of it.